Hi, everybody. Welcome. Happy Monday. We'll give people a few more minutes to get on, then we'll go ahead and get started. Welcome, everyone. Ross, I see you're joining us. Can you just talk and I'll know that we can hear you okay?
I'm here.
Perfect. Awesome. Thank you.
All right.
So you're unmuted on my end. Thanks. And Eric, I can see you're joining us too. Thank you. Great. I see we have some more folks joining us. Welcome, everybody. We're just going to give people until the top of the hour to get logged on, and then we'll go ahead and get started. Hey, Bill, I just want to make sure I can hear you okay.
Um, are you able to hear me? Okay,
Yep. Perfect. Thank you. Thanks.
good. Thank you.
Okay, hello everyone, welcome. Why don't we go ahead and get started? I know a couple more people are going to be calling in, but we have an action-packed agenda for you today. So we'll just jump right in, and we will be recording the call so that if anyone jumps on late, they can join us. But thank you so much for being a part of our November Ambassador call. As I mentioned, we have lots of great information to share, but I did want to start by thanking all of the veterans that we have on the phone with us today. We very much appreciate your service, and many of our response team members and members of our operations team and other members of our staff have served our country, and so we're very grateful for your service. I wanted to start by sharing this great photo that you see on the screen there. These are some of the helpers that we had recently in Indonesia. So they're local children from the village where we were deploying who wanted to be a part of the action, and we're helping carry our ShelterBox tents as a part of our response to the tsunami that struck Sulawesi. And so that hope and recovery you see is really a reminder of what it is that we do, and we really do spend every day helping families to prepare for the worst day ever. And so for many families in Indonesia, that day came last month when a series of powerful earthquakes and then also a subsequent tsunami of 20-foot waves devastated the island of Sulawesi. And at the time, over 2,000 people had died and 200,000 were displaced from their homes. And so ShelterBox has been on the ground helping there in Indonesia. And I know many of you have been sharing stories about this and also bringing messages of the disaster to your communities. And so we wanted to be able to provide you an update of what your efforts have been doing. And so in Indonesia, we've now distributed aid to 200 households. We also had our team meeting over the weekend with government officials to identify additional villages and locations where aid was needed and where our tents could be put to good use. Having completed that needs assessment, we have another village identified where 121 households are in need of support. As we've talked about in the past, we're really looking to target those areas or those communities that others either can't or won't reach. And so we're working in coordination with the government and other agencies on the ground to make sure that we're not duplicating efforts and that we can find those who can really benefit from what it is that we have to offer. We also are working then as part of a cluster, so other agencies who are also responding to the disaster in Indonesia are working in coordination with us. And what the government has decided is that rather than coordinating everything at a national level at this time, they're actually going to divide up and start to work at a more regional level. And so we'll be working with the various groups to continue to determine where our help is needed so that we can make sure that we're responding appropriately in coordination with the government there. And then also we've been working with our headquarters so that we can send over more items like ropes and tarps as we're going into the rainy season so that families there have everything they need in order to survive. And so thank you all for your efforts around the work that we're doing in Indonesia, in addition to other countries around the globe right now, which we'll share further into the call. But here you can see, again, just a photo of that recovery starting to happen, and it's because of the work that you make possible. So thank you. So then going over today's agenda, we do have some special guests today that we're very excited about. So we have a board member and also a response team member and Hall of Fame member, Bill Woodard, joining us on today's call. He's going to share more about what goes into our decision to deploy. Bill has been on 10 different deployments on our behalf himself, and so he's really seen and understood the different conditions that ShelterBox takes into account when we're making those difficult decisions of where to send our limited aid and teams. We also will do what we always do and go through some of your successes and do some ambassador shout outs. We have an Ambassador of the Month 2 award as well as a new Hall of Fame member that we're excited to share about. We also have Ross Spencer, who's a Hall of Fame member as well, joining to share about the one thing that he includes in presentations and to give us a little bit of advice from his years of experience. Eric Elsey is joining us to give us an update on the expedition. So many of the calls over the summer that we had, he couldn't join us because he was literally on the water those days. And so we're excited to have Eric on to share a bit about what he saw and what he learned along the river. And then we have some information on sort of year-end fundraising ideas and some current deployments as well. So Bill, at this point, I would love to be able to turn it over to you. And I just wanted to share that the reason we invited Bill on today, besides his long list of credentials that I mentioned, is because we have gotten questions around, these U.S. disasters that we've been seeing. We've had multiple hurricanes this year and wildfires, as have happened this past weekend in California. And so we wanted to make sure that you, as our frontline team, really understand how we make those decisions of when and where to deploy around the globe. And so here to share more about that with us is Bill.
Thank you very much, Sarah. Could we go to the first slide?
Yep, absolutely.
Thank you.
Sorry, one second.
Your interactions with Rotary clubs have been like mine as of late. There's been some question as to how the ShelterBox makes a decision to deploy, and again, as Sarah said, how that impacts the U.S. So I wanted to start with what you can find on our website regarding this, because I know in many cases I've been able to refer the individual who is questioned to our website in order to get some very good answers. If you go to our website, and if you want to just cycle through this for me, Sarah, that would be helpful. You'll see the criteria as a response to, first of all, government requesting help. In most cases, we will be waiting for a country's government to determine the need. In some instances, though, we've not done that. And a good example is our Indonesian deployment right now. The request for help came through Rotary, and there was some question on Indonesia's part whether or not they were going to ask for help from the outside at all. So since we already had equipment in country and already had a good Rotary network in country, it was decided that we would, at the very least, deploy a team and provide that equipment to the most vulnerable families that we had in the country. So whenever we deploy, we're really looking for a minimum of 200 families that can use the aid. And then again, is our aid appropriate? In many cases, it isn't, for all kinds of reasons. But if it is appropriate, as it was in Indonesia, and we have it on hand, we're going to go for broke. The next slide talks about, can we deploy safely? And for our SRTs, that's really the critical question. Remember, the SRTs have 3 criteria in their job description. One is to be safe. If we're looking at an environment that we can't assure their safety in, we're not going to deploy our teams. An example is Syria, where it is not safe for us to deploy our teams. Consequently, we have found local partners who we have vetted and trained, who are able to work in those very difficult situations to distribute our aid. The next is local capacity. Again, the agencies the local agencies that are there, and can they in fact meet the needs of their communities. The length of time of the support. We really, if we're looking at flooding, and historically flooding is going to be something that is a very quick kind of event, even though the disaster or the raft that it leaves behind is far more than quick. If the people are going to be able to get back to their homes and their homes are reasonably intact within a short period of time, 1 month, we're not going to deploy. Um, again, in so many cases where there is flooding, we're looking at extenuating circumstances where there's a right of ownership and other related problems as well. So again, unless we can establish that we've got at least a 1 month time period where the families are going to be without housing, we won't we won't respond. And then the speed of recovery. Again, in those flooding instances, oftentimes the speed of recovery can be very quick. So if we go to the next slide in our decision to deploy, we're looking at speed and efficiency. How quickly and effectively can the families respond? Do we have the resources needed for the duration of the response? And here there's a very good question that we need to ask ourselves in major events. Let's take the Caribbean a year ago, where the two hurricanes were so devastating. We very candidly had need to respond in more areas than we did, but we didn't have the capacity to do it. We neither had the numbers of SRTs nor the equipment available. So our response had to be limited. Another issue, and a really critical and important issue, is the sphere standards. And we operate with a operations manual in the shelter sector, as in all other sectors, with a common handbook. That's the sphere standards that literally determine how our aid is distributed, and how we place it. Example, when we put our tents up, if they're going to be put up in an area where there's going to be a number of tents, are they going to be able to be placed at the right distances for fire safety, the right distances for latrines, the right distances from water, and the like. So again, meeting those sphere standards is critical. Let's go to the next slide. And all of this information, again, is available on our website, and we'll show you here in just a moment how to get to that. Then we take a look at the Global Development Index ratings. Again, does a country have the capacity to respond and meet its own needs? And in this particular case, as we work through it, we will find that there are countries, as there were last year in the Caribbean, like Antigua, Barbuda, or Dominica, that simply don't have the ability to meet their own needs. So in making the decisions as to how we deploy, even though Puerto Rico was impacted, we decided not to go to Puerto Rico at that time because we were so stretched, and we felt Puerto Rico had, again, the infrastructure of the United States to support it. And as we asked the questions again about the ranking of a country and its ability to meet needs, its Human Development Index, we find that countries like Indonesia can use support based on their rankings. Countries like the United States, again, are less reliant. So now the question really becomes to those questions that get asked when we're in a Rotary meeting or any other meeting. Does ShelterBox respond to the United States? And how does our decision to deploy impact us in the United States? And your response should be, we have in the past and can see ourselves in the future deploying in the U.S. Based on previous events, we know that due to the high quality of infrastructure, social support, availability of resources in the U.S., as well as the preparedness activities of FEMA, the capacity of state and county level governments to respond, and start the return process is very strong. However, if the scale of an event were to prevent this, or there was to be a call for international assistance, then there would be a place for ShelterBox to respond. So I'm asking each of you to find in your own words the way to respond to that question. Do we respond in the U.S. Using this this as a template? Um, the reality of it is that in most cases in the U.S., we will either not have the government asking for help through the emergency response process, or we will observe either through direct involvement or our observing from the outside that there is not the need for our equipment. So now let's talk about how that gets translated into reality. So if I could have the next slide, please. We've got wildfires going on in California right at the moment that are just horrendous. And so we asked the first question, the number of families in need. And we know at this stage of the game, there are more than 200 families that would need help. So we've answered that question. Currently, it's unclear, but it appears that more than 300,000 people have been evacuated. We've all heard about the loss of building, the loss of life, and the need for help. If we take a look at the length of the time that the families will need this, it's unlikely that emergency shelter will be required in significant quantities due to the preparedness activities of FEMA. As most of you probably know, when there's an event of this scale in the United States, FEMA and Red Cross USA are on the spot handing out shelter shelter subsidies. Oftentimes coupons that allow the family to stay in motels, hotels, or other community locations that are available immediately. So again, the need for tented shelter in the U.S. is, in this kind of event, very unlikely. Yes, there will likely be a few people that might have benefited by it. Will there be 200? In all probability, not in the U.S. As we continue down through this document, answering the questions that our deployment requirements are built upon, we quickly come to the conclusion that our type of aid in this particular situation is simply not going to be necessary. We will continue to monitor the event, and I believe if we continue to go down further in this document, it will speak to that, but we will at this point likely not even deploy a team, because we are communicating again with FEMA. We are observing. We are getting the press releases. We are getting the feedback from our other partners that has us believe that the United States government, the county and community governments, have the emergency shelter needs for this population under control. So with that, what questions might be out there on your part? Again, the focus here is the question of, does ShelterBox respond to events in the United States? And again, if we go back to the policy as it pertains to the United States, and if that was 3 slides back, we see that in the past they have. in the future. They could, but on these kinds of events that we've seen over the course of the last few months, the need for our equipment and the way that we operate by asking a government to invite us in, those criteria are not met. So again, back to the question. Does anybody have
If anyone
further
has
comments?
questions, you can type in the chat box on the right or raise your hand. Bill, we got one comment that this is hugely helpful, and thank you for sharing.
You bet. You bet. And I think to that point, the important thing is that we each take this statement far more concise than our decision to deploy on the website. And we find our own words to be able to state this succinctly, positively, and really play on the fact that we've been here before, and if the need is great enough, we'll be here again. But our government has such a strong infrastructure that emergency shelter needs are being met for these localized events. Any other questions?
Nope, just another comment that it makes sense, Bill. So if you would like to stay on and any questions do come up, I'll let you know. But otherwise, maybe we'll jump into our shout outs portion, and then I'll let you know if any questions do emerge.
Perfect. And if anybody has a question, wants to discuss this further, certainly don't hesitate to contact me personally.
Thank you. Thanks, Bill. Okay, great. So at this point, Cherie, if you would like to walk us through all of the awesome things our ambassadors have been doing. I see some great fundraising totals up there on the screen of what the team has been busy doing during October, but I will pass it over to you.
Absolutely. Congratulations, team. In October, we raised as a team over $100,000 to forward the ShelterBox mission. So thank you very much. And on the screen, big thank you to Jack Young, Eric Elsey, Lewis Turpin, David Adder, Stephen Tonkinson, Laura Helmer, Janine Murrell, Nancy Dodge, Larry Pallant, and Mark Dyer for being our top 10 fundraisers of the month. Look out for the announcement on Facebook later today for another shout out. And speaking of activity, we have some busy ambassadors. So here we have some activity from Laura Helmer. She is on the left at her former Rotary Club, and they raised $1,000 the day that she left in April, and another $1,000 that day that she presented to give them their Silver Hero Award status. And on the right, you can see her displaying at her town's farmers market. Thank you, Laura, for taking ShelterBox everywhere you go. And on here, I'd like to recognize one of our newer ambassadors, Oscar, and his district partner is Bill Bayou. Oscar is just on our team for a month or less, and he jumped right in, teaming up with Bill to achieve big things in their district. So Oscar, if you're on, I just want to thank you for going in great guns. Here we have a lot of pictures from the Pacific Northwest mini training that took place up at Bill Woodard's location in Vancouver. Lots of activity, lots of fun, and many stories for sure. So thank you, Bill, for helping to put that on, and all of the ambassadors that joined that training team to present and share their ShelterBox successes with the new ambassadors who were there. One of those newer ambassadors was Anthony Hansen, and he has had a fun month himself. So first he went to the Pacific Northwest mini training, and here you see him doing a little demo presentation on the very left. And then he went to a charity fundraiser that very night where his wife Amy had the idea of making a Rotary themed tree, to which she suggested a ShelterBox tree. They bought and decorated both trees, one ShelterBox and one Rotary themed, and they were auctioned off for the Dream Center charity. So thank you, Anthony, for keeping ShelterBox in all that you do.
And Anthony's on with us today. Anthony, anything you want to share about any of these events? No, it looks like a lot of fun. I'll have to work on my own tree. Looks great. Okay, perfect.
And on this slide, we have the recent activity of Dave Hall. On the left, he was presenting to the Tacoma North Rotary Club. And then you see his display there on the right. And he says there was even a hint of sizzle. I'm sure there was, Dave, because you are hugely passionate in sharing your ShelterBox story. I even think I see a bottle of ShelterBox wine there. Some more activity from the Pacific Northwest team. We have Kieran Walsh and Greg Vick. First on the left, just want to recognize them again for receiving the club's Wes Woodick Award for Extraordinary Commitment to Rotary Principles. And they were specifically recognized for their enthusiastic, successful, and continuous dedication to ShelterBox. And I couldn't agree with that more. And then later on the right, you see them presenting to some children. It looks like they are in a 5th grade class at Thurston Elementary in Eugene, Oregon. So you can see them doing everything from educating fellow Rotarians in their district to educating the smaller future ShelterBox ambassadors of tomorrow. So thank you, Greg and Karen, if you're on. Appreciate all that you do. So I titled this slide, What Did Dave Nichols Do This Month? So you see him on the left. He's organized a little mini meetup with Yi Sheng, gathered Dave Nichols, Yi Sheng, Dave Hall, and we also have Ryan there as well, or Reese Pearson, sorry. I guess Ryan was there, but he's not in the picture. And then later on, Dave could be seen at different preparedness events around Seattle, as well as the King County Employee Giving Program. So Dave Nichols, thank you again for all that you do and taking ShelterBox everywhere you go, because I know you do take it everywhere.
And Dave's on with us today. Dave, anything you want to share about your activities from the past month?
Nope, you're doing great. Thank you.
All right.
All right, moving on, we have some pictures here and some shared successes from Tom Grant, which I have to say he was feeling back to normal. He had just gotten back from a vacation and he jumped right back into it after a South African adventure. You can see him at a community fall festival. And then one of his favorite shows or events on the right is the District 7300 Interact Conference. So Tom, thank you so much for all that you do to share ShelterBox in and around your community. It's hard to believe that anybody around you doesn't know what ShelterBox is. And this slide is the adventures of Ned. Ned Morris has taken ShelterBox on the road, and he has submitted to me lots of pictures and stories from different areas, both in his district and outside of his district. I do believe Ned was planning on joining. Sarah, do you see him?
1 second here.
Because it would be best if Ned shared his stories, because he had a lot of adventures. But I do think
I don't see him on today. I don't think he must have had something come up at the last minute.
All right. Well, Ned, when you listen back to this, thank you for taking ShelterBox on the road and for sharing ShelterBox both in your community and outside of it. And then Ned and Dave actually took ShelterBox to Big West Rotaract, taking along with them Laura Helmer, Mary Gordon, and you can see them pictured there as some ShelterBox celebrities. Thank you for rocking the room and having some great interaction with these young Rotaractors. Here we have Peggy and Malcolm at the Rotary Club, and you know I'm going to butcher this, Sarah, Klamath County? Awesome. I'm getting better at my out of Arizona cities here. Klamath County, this was a regular presentation with about 30 members and attendants, and 10 or so gathered at the table afterwards. Got several newsletter signups, a liaison, and Peggy and Malcolm, you're just so great at not only sharing ShelterBox, but really connecting interested people with me and helping them get engaged with ShelterBox, become volunteers. So thank you for continuing to build up ShelterBox awareness around your district and sharing your passion with the clubs there. And we had Bill from Pennsylvania. Here we have a couple pictures where he set up ShelterBox at Council Rock North High School Interact Club, and he shares with Henry Tour there, and they share ShelterBox and display it around the district, and they're doing a great job. They've also recently joined our team, so thankful for them and all they're doing in their districts. Here we have a slide dedicated to Frank Spears. He has been on the road again after recovering from back surgery, And he had a full house at the Savannah West Rotary Club. He's really embraced the service above selfie, as you can see here. And then he also met with the Brunswick, Georgia Rotary Club. They put a big smile on his face when they presented him with a $1,000 donation. And the woman pictured at the top left actually won 50-50 and donated her winnings back to ShelterBox. So I'm sure that was all in the way you sold ShelterBox and shared your ShelterBox passion. Frank, thank you for doing so. You're doing great things over there.
Frank, anything you want to share about your adventures last month?
The only thing I can say is I am just having way too much fun. I need to send more money because I'm just shouldn't be having all this fun.
I like when they pay you in cold hard cash. That's great.
Yeah, I mean when they start handing me dollar bills and then I got to send it to you, it's too exciting. But what's most exciting is these selfies. People just love to get all pumped up, and it just kind of shares the experience with everybody.
Fun. Awesome. Thank you, Frank.
All right, and we had some ShelterBox in the media. Ned Morris did plan a Shine for ShelterBox. He had one last week. I think he's doing a second one this week. And it got some attention in the local media, you can see here. So thank you, Ned, for sharing that and getting it pitching it to local media and getting it out there in the press. And thank you for putting on a Shine event. We really appreciate you.
Yeah, and if any ambassadors in their communities have events that they'd like to publicize or upcoming, farmers markets or things like that where you'll be, we have templates for press releases that are available on the portal, or we would be happy to help you customize something for your area. So if you do need help in alerting your local media to all the great things you're doing out there, please let us know and we'd be happy to help.
All right, now it's time for our team to share their successes. For any successes that weren't pictured or mentioned, we want to give you a chance to tell us about it, and we'd love to celebrate with you. Of course, you see pictured Sarah went as her favorite hero this year as Eric Elsie, and we did a little Who Wore It Better online. So if this is your first time seeing it, you can see the amazingness that is this Halloween costume. Anybody have any successes they'd like to share?
Sheree, I don't see any so far, but again, we'll let people write in with those or raise their hand, and if any come up, I'll make sure and mention them.
That's great. Thank you, Sarah. And now it is our pleasure to announce Laura Helmer as our Ambassador of the Month. In addition to sharing ShelterBox in and around her community, Laura assisted Eric Elsie in coordinating the Rotary Club engagements during the Mississippi Expedition. She has also kept us all accountable, reminding us to vote regularly at voteforeric.com to keep him in the lead for the Rare Life Eagle Award. And she's taken these responsibilities and then added more by agreeing to be her district lead, or the district lead for District 5100. She has mentored her team and not wavered one bit in spirit. So thank you, Laura, for your passion and your tenacity.
Laura, I know you're on with us today. Anything you'd like to share or advice to other ambassadors?
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh, everyone. ShelterBox has been a passion of mine since 2007, and I'm so honored to be part of this team and to finally use my energy to help share the word where I have responsibilities and to learn from all of you, which is constant. So I'm just very grateful for the ability to serve ShelterBox.
Awesome. Thank you, Laura. We appreciate it. Thanks for all your great energy and ideas.
All right, and lastly, we want to acknowledge a new Hall of Fame member. Jim Miller out of North Carolina joins the ranks of Hall of Fame by raising over $100,000 since he started fundraising for ShelterBox. So Jim, are you on?
Yes.
Wonderful. We'd love it if you'd take a moment to talk about how you were able to get to this milestone, and if you have any advice for your fellow ambassadors.
Well, I guess the answer is if you hang in long enough, you'll make the $100,000 goal. And just be persistent and share the word.
Thank you, Jim, so much, and thank you for fundraising for ShelterBox and helping us continue to shelter more displaced families around the globe.
Yes, thank you, Jim. Super appreciate all your work throughout the years. Jim was also a really active part of helping train our response team members and involved in the early days of ShelterBox here in the US. So thank you so much, Jim. Awesome. So now at this point, we want to welcome our guest speaker, Ross, and he has some advice to share. As I mentioned, Ross is a recent Hall of Fame inductee as well, and has been doing a lot of great things in the Illinois area. And so, Ross, we'd love to hear some fundraising tips from a pro.
Where did you get that picture?
Cherie's usually going deep into the internet to find such things, so we'll have to ask her.
Well, thanks for inviting me. This has been interesting. I'm in my 10th year as an ambassador, and I mostly go around to Rotary clubs. We'll do a church occasionally. I've done students, exhibited at fairs, and that sort of thing. Generally in my presentations, I don't use PowerPoints. I will use slides, and I will use the 6-minute video that I see we don't have anymore, but I still have. And I think it gives a powerful impact. But during my presentations, I try to keep it such that I cover various things. And one of the most important parts, I think, is showing people the equipment. When you're doing the equipment, though, they need to see the pictures. And that's where I get them to open the brochure. Now, I've felt for a long time that brochures on tables at meetings and passing out and all that, people do not want to open them. It's like there's a tab on them that keeps it sealed. So they look at the outside and they never look at the inside. So I always make sure that people grab the brochure from the table, and then I have them open it, because I want you to open it to look at the equipment on the inside. And most people do look at it. And as far as I'm concerned, then I can show them the equipment, but what it's gotten them is past the fear of opening the brochure, and they can also see where they can donate, and they can see the other information about ShelterBox. So always try to get them to open the brochure, and because that's one of the keys in reaching people.
Ross, that's great. I really liked that you said that, because I think it's something so little that we can implement and easily engage our audience just a little bit more. So the next thing I'd love for you to talk to us about is how you go about managing a Rotary district. You guys have a large district out there. There's a lot of clubs to touch. So how do you go about prioritizing them?
Well, we were lucky, or I was lucky. When I joined the team in 2009, we already had 2 or 3 people who were very active, Andy Kuby and Donna Gully. And what we did was we got together with the 4th person who, I'm sorry, her name escapes me, but she's long gone. And we would have breakfast or lunch or dinner or something, and we would divide up the district. Most of the time it was, I would take clubs near where I was, Donna would take them near where she was, and Andy would take other clubs near he was. And we would concentrate on just reaching those clubs, so that if you had, which we had 70 clubs in the district or 75, each one of us had 20, 25 clubs to contact. And then we would contact them and request presentations and make those presentations and try to get people to donate one way or another. We put on a couple of events for Rotary itself. And of course, the major thing that we would always try to do is go to the district conference, because if you can display at the district conference, you can reach you can reach a lot of the head people there, and many of them didn't know about Rotary. The other thing, which I didn't tell you when we talked, was a number of years ago, 10 years ago, or 9 years ago, I was in South Carolina for the winter following right during the Haiti crisis. Nobody had been in South Carolina for ShelterBox, and I went around to probably 8 or 10 clubs. And leaving from Hilton Head, which Frank will certainly follow, leaving from Hilton Head and going all the way around state of South Carolina is a long haul. But I did it. I even went down to Savannah once too. So maybe I met Frank. I don't really remember. But the important thing is for people to who are working together in a district to get together every once in a while and socialize and talk about what they can do and to help the others manage their district.
No, absolutely. That is great advice, Ross. And that is actually what we hope for people is to build a team so you can break up the clubs and kind of manage a smaller group. You know, and I see you and Donna working together and communicating. And so that's great. Last thing, I was wondering if you'd be able to tell us, you too are a Hall of Famer, raising over $100,000 since you started supporting ShelterBox and serving our mission. I was wondering if you had any tips that you would like to share with your fellow ambassadors.
Well, first, I congratulate Jim on joining us as Hall of Famers. I concur with what he said. Just keep plugging away. It takes a while to do it. And even though you see, like earlier in the call in, the people who are raising $10,000 and $20,000, those of us who raise a little less than that, it just keeps you keep at it after a while. I think there are probably three things I would suggest. The first is no matter what you do in a presentation or in front of shows or displays and so forth, be sure to ask for money. There are a lot of people who don't, salespeople who try to be salespeople and then they flame out. And the reason is because they don't ask for the money. They don't ask for the sale. You've got to ask for the money. And if you're in a Rotary Club, I always mention the Hero program in case they'll be very interested in that too. So it's important to ask for the money. The second thing is I feel that if you can look around in clubs and find a supporter who will be there when the club starts asking their club members, where should we give our money to this year? Somebody, because you won't be there, somebody will be able to step up and say, well, I think ShelterBox is a good thing to give it to. So that's the second. But the third is to continually remind them of your presence. And here's where I have a problem in some ways. To go to a Rotary Club once or twice is probably enough for a while because they've heard you, they get tired of you, and they've heard the same old story. And they don't want to get a presentation every year. My club certainly doesn't want to hear from me every year, even though I give them a little spiel every year. So what I started doing a number of years ago was I went to visit clubs that I'd already made presentations to or I wanted to make a presentation to. I just went and visited the club, paid for my meal, and I would always ask the president, would you mind? I'm from ShelterBox. I'd like to give a 2-minute update about what we're doing. And that's what I would do. I would stand up and I'd tell them who I was, and I'd tell them that ShelterBox is in wherever we were at that time. We're in Indonesia, we're in Ghana, we're in Nicaragua or wherever. 2 minutes, and then I would sit down and say, if you have any questions, I'll be around afterwards. At least it keeps the name of ShelterBox in their psyche so that when they come to talk about money, they remember, oh yeah, that guy who keeps coming around and giving 2-minute updates, maybe we ought to give him some money. So that's my tip for the day.
Ross, thank you so much for sharing that. I have a quick clarifying question before we let you go. When you say make the ask and ask for the money, are you making the ask in your presentation? Are you doing it in the follow-up? Are you having a side conversation with the president beforehand? Would you just elaborate on that a little bit?
Sure. First, whenever I go into a Rotary meeting, I try to find out from you folks how much money they've given, so I can tell them thank you for this and thank you for your money, but I haven't heard from you in the last 2 years. I was just at a club on Thursday and they hadn't donated in a year and a half, and I made some comment in the presentation, and sure enough they gave me a check for $1,000 as I walked out the door. But no, I do it in the presentation. because not only the Rotary clubs can give you money, but the individual members of the Rotary Club can give you money.
Great, thank you, Ross. You did mention something very important, and I think it's worth reiterating, is that people, ambassadors, volunteers, you're welcome to reach out to me beforehand as you're gearing up to go into a presentation to ask what the donation, the gift history is of that Rotary Club, so you know what kind of conversation you're going to be having with this audience. Their donation history is going to give you an idea whether or not they're already engaged and how often they give, and just helps really leading into that ask. So Ross, I want to thank you for your time today. Thank you for sharing your wisdom, and the one thing you do, again, having people pick up that brochure while you're talking just to get them to open it.
Right.
Thank you, and I'm going to throw it back to Sarah.
Yeah, thank you, Ross. Just so you know, there were comments. People said great idea, and also that, you know, having lunch and giving that 2-minute visitor update is genius, and that they're going to start doing that as well. So thank you so much for the great ideas. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Great. At this time, I wanted to welcome Eric on. As you all know, Eric has been our warrior out there on the Mississippi, raising awareness and funds for ShelterBox USA. I believe at last count, he was over $60,000 and had talked to over 60 clubs. So, Eric, anything you'd like to share with this group who's been cheering you on from afar all summer long?
Well, first of all, I want to thank everybody for the support. It was so awesome to get all the comments and likes on Facebook and stuff as I was going down, and really felt like I had the whole team backing me. So it really made the trip a lot of fun. This was a childhood dream of mine to do this, and so the fact that I got to tie my passion of ShelterBox in with my lifelong dream it just made it such a more worthwhile and enjoyable experience. Like you said, I did speak to a little over 60 Rotary clubs, and sometimes 3 and 4 at a time, over the 90 days. And it was really neat. Some of these areas we don't have a huge presence in, and that was really fulfilling to me, because some of the clubs, like for instance Clinton, Iowa, they were told ahead of time I was coming into town, and by Holly, and they had never even heard of ShelterBox. Not one person in their club had. They were all Googling ShelterBox to figure out what it was about. And after I met with them and had dinner with them, they ended up cutting a check for $3,000 from their club. And again, hadn't even heard of ShelterBox before. So some of that was really rewarding. We also got some really awesome press coverage and received a lot of donations from outside of Rotary, which I thought was great. Of course, I'm a past president of the Rotary Club. I love Rotary. It's another passion of mine. But to expand our reach a little bit outside of Rotary, which was kind of nice. I think we got one check from a church for $3,400. We've got a lot of individual donations. I'm thinking of one right now for $1,000 from an individual who has no affiliation with Rotary whatsoever. So it was really an awesome experience. Obviously, besides the fact that I just had an absolute blast canoeing the entire Mississippi River, just to meet so many awesome people and have so much support from the ShelterBox team was just absolutely fabulous. You got the Vote for Eric thing up there. Laura's done a fabulous job. Hopefully we make it in the top 5 for that. So please go to Vote for Eric. You can go to Vote for Eric every day from every single device you have. If we get selected for that in the top 5, then the panelists of judges are going to select somebody out of that, and ShelterBox could win $50,000, which would obviously be phenomenal as well. Trying to think what else. I mean, I just had the time of my life. Excuse me. I've been back about a month now, and it's been a little bit hard to get reacclimated to normal life. It was kind of fun sleeping in a tent most nights and cooking on a camp stove, but back to reality now. tomorrow I'm giving another ShelterBox presentation. I've gotten a lot of calls from clubs down here in District 6960 to give presentations about the trip. So of course that is a huge tie-in for ShelterBox. Tomorrow I think I'm speaking to Marco Island. I spoke to Fort Myers South last week. Next week I'm speaking to another club in Naples. So it's been really a cool experience, and gotten a lot of support from my home district. And so I guess I could answer any questions if anybody's got any questions about the trip or ShelterBox.
Yeah, there aren't any questions yet so far, but Ross Spencer said he'll be down in Sanibel after January and would like to have lunch with you.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So, I think Eric is just a great example of taking something that was a passion and, like you said, a childhood dream, but then using it as a fundraiser for ShelterBox. And we've had other ambassadors, bicycle through a state, or we even had one do a global journey on our behalf. And so if you have an idea or something that you'd like to pursue, please let us know, and we'd be happy to support you in whatever type of fundraising effort that might be. It doesn't need to be, a pre-organized event. Eric just came up with this big idea and then was able to use it to raise awareness about our mission, and then also the vital funds that we need to be able to continue our work. So thank you so much, Eric. And yeah, as he mentioned, you can go to voteforeric.com from now until December 5th. Eric is in 3rd place right now, and so we'd like to keep him up there at the top so that we can be considered for the grand prize, which, as he mentioned, is at $50,000. So thank you for everybody who's supported the expedition along the way. And that's another way you can still stay involved for the next month or so. So thank you, Eric. Appreciate everything you've been doing and your time. And we'll look forward to your next great adventure. Thanks so much. At this point, we wanted to just take a moment and to remember and honor an ambassador who we lost just 2 weeks ago. Ken Thompson passed away from a heart attack, but you can see him there in the photo at an early SAFE training that we had in Texas. And Ken was a very dedicated Rotarian. He was the district governor in his area this year. And he was also a dedicated and great ShelterBox ambassador as well. And so we just had an opportunity to actually spend time with Ken at the end of Eric's expedition. He was with us in New Orleans for the Paddles Up party that we had and hosted. He spoke at that about the great work that ShelterBox and Rotary are doing together in the world. And so we did want to take a moment and just remember Ken at this time. I know this is a busy slide, but it's just really a reminder that Rotary has things happening all year round. The biggest things that should be on your radar at this point in time are just, the presentations that we've heard so much about. So just getting out there and getting in front of clubs, but then also now's a really great time to be able to have a spot reserved at your local PETS conference, so the President-elect training seminar, or at the district conference. We heard Ross mention earlier what an awesome time that was to talk to a lot of Rotarians at once from all over the district. And so since those events typically happen in the spring, now is really the time when you want to be securing a spot at those events. So either to have a tent or a table set up, or to even have a few minutes during the general session, or to be able to show a video. We have lots of great videos from the past few years that have shown at the Rotary International Convention that are just 3 minutes long. And so being able to insert one of those into a district conference or a PETS training can go a long way as well. So now is the time to be making those asks of your Rotary districts. Looking at kind of the end of the year, one of the big things that we like to mention at this time of year is just that about 1/3 of annual giving happens in December. And so, as the holidays approach, people are reminded of others who are not as fortunate as them. And it's also a time for people to get in donations before the end of the year for tax write-off purposes. And so we do see a lot of giving across the country happening during this end of year season. And so There are just some different ideas there on the screen to get engaged in December. So, appealing to local Rotary clubs if they want to give a year-end gift, hosting a Shine for ShelterBox dinner. We have lots of great ideas and tips on how to do one of those. We have a global gifts program. So in lieu of gifts for the holidays, if someone would like to give a water filter or a solar light to people in another part of the world, that's an option that we promote. We also have a fundraising tool. So if you wanted to set up your own fundraiser during the holidays, you can do that, or consider making a donation to ShelterBox. But to sort of help with this year-end giving, we have built a page on our website. So it's just shelterboxusa.org/light. And it really focuses on, as families are in their darkest hours after a disaster, we can help spread light to the world. And so the opportunity for people is to donate a light at that $30 price point. So it's kind of a lower price point, than the $1,000 box, so that people can get involved. And so this is the opportunity we're going to be kind of promoting and pushing out on Giving Tuesday, for example. But if you are at Rotary clubs or you're sending holiday cards to friends and family and you want people to have an easy kind of low cost way to give back, this is an opportunity that you can promote within your community and among your friends and family. So again, it's just at shelterboxusa.org/light, and is an opportunity for people to do something meaningful this holiday season. So know that that is available to you, and help us spread the word far and wide. We also have going on the Brighten Lives Challenge. The idea behind this being that each of our ambassadors is challenged to either host their own Shine for ShelterBox event this winter, or to encourage your Rotary Club or a district to get involved and host one of these events. It's just a way to engage people in our mission and to help share the word that as families are affected by disaster and power lines are down and as lights go out, there are many people who are left without light and warmth and comfort during the holiday season. And so if we can bring some of that to them, we can really make a difference for families around the globe. And so we've got a ton of great resources on our website. If you go to shelterboxusa.org/shine, there are tons of ideas for how to do an event, either as a smaller dinner within your home or at a regular Rotary meeting, transforming that into a Shine event, or hosting a standalone larger event for a group of people. Ned Morris, who was referenced earlier, has one each year with his larger Rotary club, and then people from his community where they do a live and silent auction alongside a dinner. So there are all different options for how this can look. We've seen some successful events with just wine and cheese parties that tell people about our mission and invite people to make a donation. And so really kind of the sky's the limit with how you can plan those events. Here's just some examples from the one that Tom Grant hosted earlier in the year. So just as we mentioned, it can kind of really take any shape or form, but everything from a candlelight dinner to an existing Rotary holiday party, this can be added to. And a nice new opportunity that we have this year is that Luminade is selling their solar lights at cost to our ambassadors and to Rotary clubs. So if you are interested in hosting a Shine event and you want to have a takeaway piece or something that you could sell to people the night of the event, they do sell us those packages at cost. And then if you charge the full price for the light, which is what they ask you to do, then the remainder of those funds can be given to ShelterBox. So if you purchase a box of lights for $500, for example, we can sell them for $1,000, and then $500 of that comes back to ShelterBox. So this can be done for Shine dinners or just as a part of your presentations or an upcoming event that you might have. So just wanted to give a quick reminder of that. We have a lot going on in the world, but this is our operations update. So as you can see, we're spread apart, responding to everything from typhoons to tsunamis to conflict situations across the globe. This slide is available on our ambassador portal. I won't go in detail into all of these different deployments right now since we're running out of time, but at any point in time, you can go to the news section of our website and find more information about everywhere that we're currently working in the world. We also put updates onto our ambassador Facebook page and our regular ShelterBox USA Facebook page very regularly. We have live updates that take place every Tuesday, and so we invite you to find out more about our deployments in any of those locations. So I know our hour is coming to a close. Thank you to Bill and to Ross and to Eric for sharing all your great ideas. Congratulations to Laura and to Jim for your recognition this month, and thank you for all that you've been doing. I'm happy to answer any questions that folks have either right now on the call or feel free to email us as well. But we will be sharing this call recording as well as the slides that you saw today. So if there's anything else that you need, please do let us know, and we would be happy to get that for you. So thank you, everybody, and not seeing any questions. Have a great week. Happy Thanksgiving to you all, and we'll look forward to talking to you in December. Thanks so much.
Thank you, everyone.